Well, let's get started. This is Naba'a Muhammad, host of Straight Words with Naba'a, Richard Muhammad, DJ Murphy, and James G. Muhammad. I'm honored to have on our interview line today a brother with a long history of activism and service in revolutionary work, Brother Zaki Baruti out of St. Louis. He's going to be discussing with us the case of the Uhuru 3 going on in Florida right now. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Zaki. How are you?
I'm doing well. Wa alaikum salam.
Now, you were just in Tampa as this trial began. Can you talk a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then give us something of your impressions of this trial, what it is, and why it's happening?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for allowing me to be on your show and continue the great work that you're doing to educate our people. As you mentioned, my name is Zaki Baruti, and I'm the President General of the Universal African People's Organization based in St. Louis, Missouri, as well as I'm a former candidate for governor of the state of Missouri back in 1984 and 88, as well as in 2000. And in 1988, Minister Louis Farrakhan, I'm always very grateful to his powerful messages to our people, endorsed my candidacy for governor of the state of Missouri. And at that time, when I ran, there was not one black governor in this country out of 50. And fast forward today, we only have one, Westmore, and our organization pushes a concept that's called proportionate political representation, which simply means that wherever percentage we are as the people on the national, state, and local levels of government, we should have that percentage of political power, especially in light of the fact that we pay taxes. But going back to the trial in of itself, as well as one other thing, I'm also the publisher of our quarterly newspaper, which is called the African News World. Going back to the issue of the Uhuru 3, our organization is part of a national coalition that's called the Black is Back Coalition, of which one of the members, Omali Yeshitela is the chairperson, and he represents the African People's Socialist Party. And then he has a support group that's called the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which includes Penny Hess and Jesse Nevel. The three of them, Omali Yeshitela, Penny Hess, and Jesse Nevel, at this point in time are called the Uhuru 3 because they have been charged by the United States government with conspiring with Russia to cause dissent and dissent here in this country, and then that's count one, and count two, actually making it happen. And by making it happen, supposedly that they had put together, not supposedly, they did, put together a petition calling for the United States to be charged with genocide, as well as they had a candidate, Jesse Nevel, who ran for mayor for the city of St. Petersburg. We, as a collective, see this as a replay in terms of the charges against Omali Yeshitela and to Marcus Messiah Garvey when he was falsely charged by the United States government in the early 1920s with mail fraud, as well as systematic attack on the Black Panther Party with numerous attacks upon their offices, as well as false charges against many of their members. And the purpose, as we all know, that the federal government of this country do not want anybody, including when you look at the assassination of Malcolm X, to question, as well as Dr. King. And I mention this because, as you know, Dr. King was assassinated exactly 1 year from the date on April the 4th, 1967, when he criticized the United States foreign policy in Vietnam, that he was assassinated, as I just mentioned, 1 year later on April 4th, 1968. The federal government does not want any, especially black people, criticizing their foreign policy. And the bottom line, as we see it as an organization, that the charges against the Uhuru 3 are based on their continuous criticism of the foreign policy of the United States as it relates to the Ukraine war, and overall in terms of its colonialism, implementation of neocolonialism in countries in Africa, and it's just that attack based on, as I just mentioned, the consistent criticism that his organization had forward against the United States foreign policy in Ukraine. So this week, their trial began, and there's a fourth person also on trial independently of them, who used to be a member of a young man named Augustus Romain. And the trial began Tuesday. And being in support, I was there for the opening trial. And along with not just myself, a number of other progressive organizations from around the country, representatives was also present. And they were pushing for the court to be packed with supporters, which it was. Now, the backdrop of the trial itself, which is reflective of trials across this country, is that the jury that was finally picked was really not a jury of their peers, when conceptually that's what the judicial system projects, that when you're on trial, you should be tried by, your peers. Of the 12 jurors, only one was a black female, and you did have a black male as an alternate. In a city, Tampa, which is about 22, 23, 24% black, it should have been at least percentage-wise, at least three blacks part of that jury selection, but it wasn't. And you had, of course, the opening statements by the prosecutors as well as the defense. And as we sat through the trial, for my observations, the case was a really strong case, in my opinion. And we stayed through Friday in terms of the conclusion of the jury. The trial itself, and to resume next week with an expectation that it will conclude close to Wednesday. And the trial is very important for us to really pay attention as a race of people, because it may set, if found guilty, it would send a chilling effect upon, the freedom of speech that we're supposed to have when it comes to saying, addressing the issues that impact us directly. And foreign policy has a direct impact on our communities in a number of ways. One, you have millions of dollars, and not millions, billions of dollars being spent in wars that, that are many times unjust. And as I mentioned with the assassination of King, who spoke out against Vietnam, as well as we pay taxes in this to the government, and they use our money without our consent to do what they've been doing in terms of funding many of the wars that take place across this globe, as well as it can lead to, just like the recent Afghanistan disaster, the Iraq war, with a lot of trauma to families who family members have to go to fight these wars. So it's and they've been dubbing this trial as the trial of the century, because it would be reflective, as I just mentioned, a censure of folks who are critical of this, the policies of this government in terms of foreign affairs.
So the trial began on September 3rd, and it looks like it's projected to end around September 11th. One of the things that caught my attention is Omali Yeshitela is no stranger to the struggle in the Black community. This is not someone who just appeared out of nowhere. This is a man whose work is well known.
Absolutely.
When you look at how these charges were framed, and you look at really since I guess around 2020, there's been this constant cry of Russian involvement in U.S. elections, and in particular, targeting Black voters and Black folk by spreading quote-unquote disinformation. I've always been very skeptical of those charges because to me, Black folk don't need anybody outside of this country to get us to understand the contradictions and our suffering inside of America. How should our people be looking and really paying attention to this trial and its aftermath? Because this thing isn't, this type of action by the federal government isn't going away, no matter who's in the presidential seat.
You are absolutely correct. In terms of just the overall framing of, first of all, as you made mention, Chairman Omali Yeshitela has been for years, he's 82 years of age, almost, I guess, close to knowing his past. He's been involved in the movement almost from his teenage years all the way up until now. And the whole question of putting that fear tactic and framing it around Russia, this country is very hypocritical because it's involved in trying to manipulate the elections of countries across the globe, in Guatemala, in Honduras, just all across, in Venezuela. They have always tried to manipulate other governments' elections and have been involved also in the direct overthrow of duly elected people, including Patrice Lumumba. We can't have historical amnesia when he was first elected the president of the Congo, to supporting the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi. This country, is so hypocritical, and to such a level in terms of pushing legislation under what was called the Milan Act toward Russia, which would have punished different African countries. As you know, at the start of the Russian-Ukraine war, that there was a resolution in the United Nations pushed to criticize Russia, but about 20 African countries refused to go along with it. And then they came up with this act to punish African countries and leaders who had any type of relationship or involvement with Russia. So they're trying to dictate to different countries as well as organizations who should we align with. So that's the battle that we got going, and that's how they're trying to frame that argument in terms of putting in front of the people that Russia interference in our elections, when it's just the opposite in terms of if you look at the historical involvement of this country in everybody else's election.
Yeah, it's also amazing to me how quickly and in some sense silently the government can move these things. When the arrests were made in 2022 at the Uhuru headquarters in St. Petersburg, there was a lot of media attention to that. There hasn't been as much media attention paid now that the trial is actually now that the trial has actually began. So I think that we have to really understand the enormous power of this government and associated institutions like the mainstream media to present a certain picture. So how do we get our people, or how important is it for us to continue to fight this thing and not just roll over and let it happen?
First of all, for those folks who are conscious, it's our historic duty to speak truth to power through wherever means that we have, like through your program, through our newspaper, our most recent issue of our newspaper, we focus on that trial to try to educate and present an alternative view because, as you mentioned, the major media is really an organ of this capitalistic/imperialistic society that wants to promote their particular agenda. And I always remember a quote from Brother Malcolm that, the media make you think that your friends are your enemies and your enemies are your friends. And so that's the purpose of the mainstream media, to push their propaganda line to keep us confused and keep us at bay from challenging the unfairness of this particular system. So, as I just mentioned, it's just our duty for wherever aspects that we have to media to present the truth as we see it. And prayerfully, the masses of the people would be awakened to, the madness of this government policy. In fact, let me just as an alternative, outside of this, when we talk about media, I don't know if you're aware of a campaign for folks not to unsubscribe to Netflix, because as you know, historically, media also has portrayed us as buffoons and in the past. But once again, that ugliness has risen. I don't know if you were aware that Netflix has a reboot of the Good Times TV series, where they projected black people with babies carrying Glocks and pushing drugs, and just us as a people enjoying playing with roaches. So that's, again, symbolic of the kind of media impressions and impact on people. And I want to keep emphasizing media is many times a form of propaganda to keep people confused and ignorant on the serious issues that impact our lives daily in this country. And that's why I salute the Final Call newspaper, because, of course, that's an alternate media source for folks to get the real deal in terms of what's happening across the globe.
Beyond these four individuals, how do you see? Go ahead.
One other thing while I was on my mind, I'm sorry. On the date that they attacked their home, which was early, they have never been involved in any violent confrontations that I know of between their movement and the government. But they came early in the morning, 5 o'clock, with heavily armored vehicles, SWAT team basically, flash banged their homes and offices. And it reminded me of, the 1969 attack upon Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. And they sent a drone up into their homes. I'm proud to say, though, that on that date, that they had reached out to our organization and a couple other progressive people here in St. Louis when they attacked Omali's home, and we stood with them criticizing that particular attack. So, and that was meant to terrorize and paint a picture, a real negative picture right off of the Uhuru movement. Why is the government, with all this weaponry or projection of weaponry, going into the home of the chairman? And people, sadly to say, right away they must have done something wrong. So we have to look at all the type of imagery and tactics that they use to psychologically attack our community.
And you can look at the assault on the Uhuru headquarters and the targeting of these activists versus the targeting of white supremacists and white right-wing groups who the FBI itself has declared to be the number one domestic threat. Yet we find Brother Omali and others being actually dragged into court. What are we seeing with that?
Well, we're seeing, again, the hypocrisy and the double standards of law enforcement here in this country, which is a continuation historically of how they treat black people or people of African descent in this country. So, again, that's just another example of, the racism and the hypocrisy of this government.
Lastly, I'm going to close with this, and then you can give me anything you think that we haven't asked you that's important. But as black people begin to continually try, or not only try, but struggle inside of America, but also establish or relations or speak to external affairs of this country, these attacks now, and I think the thing that we really have to let people know is this is much bigger than the Uhuru 3. It's almost as if this country is trying to put us back into a domestic box and then shut that box down. What are your thoughts on that?
Brother, I mean, you were right on point. That's the bottom line. They want to keep us in a box, not dealing with any international issues, as well as trying to shut us down when we speak to issues of police violence right here inside of this country. And so that is just part of their overall agenda to maintain white supremacy, not just here in this country, but worldwide. And so to that end, we have to do our diligent study of liberation movements across this globe and be supportive. It's just like what's happening in Africa in what is called the Sahel a region of Africa, West Africa, in the countries of Burkina Faso, Mali, and another country. I mean, it's just that the new governments that have come into power are kicking the United States and European countries out of other countries. So and we have to be like in Zimbabwe, if you recall, and when they began the land reform program to give back to the indigenous Zimbabwean people, this government tried to place sanctions on the former government of Robert Mugabe for giving land back that had been taken from the indigenous people of Zimbabwe by the white settlers, and they tried to punish Zimbabwe. So again, this country is just projecting white supremacy through the economic system of capitalism and imperialism to keep the peoples of the world under their foot, under the heels of their control. So that's the struggle, and our people have to understand that we have to do diligent study of world affairs, and we have to not just rely on the media projections of what takes place in world affairs. And so that's the task going forward. And last but not least, change is only going to come about when people organize. And that's one of the things that we always push, that every black person needs to belong to a organization that has a track record speaking truth to power and trying to make a difference in our community. Too many progressive organizations just don't have the membership that they should to have the greater impact that we can to make differences here in the society. So that's the battle going forward. And you got to put past your fears, and if you can't get out there on the streets with the people, then those who knowing what's going on and knowing what's wrong also should financially support those people that's on the ground trying to make a difference. And I firmly believe that we will be victorious because with God, all things are possible. So victory and victory toward the for the Uhuru 3 in that trial. Brother Richard.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm here. So, brothers and sisters and listeners, you've heard from Zaki Baruti, President General of the Universal African People's Organization, and we've been talking about the case of the Uhuru 3. Brother Zaki, how can people follow you and get information about what you're doing?
Okay, they can go to our website, which is www.uao.org, or they can call our office, area code 314-833-4151, as well as they can call me directly, area code 314-477-4629. As well as I'd like to give a shout out to two Chicago activists. We'd like to shout out to Lionel Nixon, as well as Camp Reparations Movement in Chicago, and he was present at the trial also. So, and again, I want to thank you for your the work that you're doing, and may God and may Allah continue to bless you.
Well, thank you. And I think one of the names you were talking about out of Chicago was Brother Cam Howard, correct?
Yes, Cam Howard.
All right. Thank you very much, Brother Zaki, and we'll try to stay in touch with you in particular. I think there's some things going on in St. Louis that we'd like to talk to you about once you get through from some travel that you're going to undertake. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.